Today, as Namibia holds its special elections, we are putting the spotlight on first-time voters and the power they have to shape the country's future. With a large and growing youth population, young people play an increasingly important role in our elections. Empowering these first-time voters goes beyond just teaching them about how to vote. It's about inspiring them to make thoughtful choices and fully exercise their democratic rights. In this discussion, we'll dive into the unique challenges and opportunities young voters face, the role of election officials in encouraging young voter turnout, and the hopes first-time voters have for Namibia's future. With insights from our guests, we'll explore what it truly means to support young citizens as they become engaged and informed voters. I'm Jonas Mbambo, alongside our sign language interpreter for tonight, Joyce Rukoro, and this is Situation Critical. Joining us to discuss this important topic are Joyce Iras, an election observer and human rights analyst who is joining us via Zoom. On my far left, we have Thomas Shapi, the Deputy Director of Elections Administration at the Electoral Commission of Namibia, or the ECN. And last but not least, we have Lapaka Shea Shapaka, the first-time voter and political science student. Jessica, Lapaka, Mr. Shapi, thank you so much for making time to join us. All right, brilliant. Jessica, let's perhaps start off with you. The common challenges that first-time voters face in Namibia, especially from a human rights perspective. And talking about human rights, we spoke about, whether voting is a privilege or is it a fundamental human right?
All right, thank you so much, Jonas. I'm happy to be part of this discussion, considering that this will be my second time voting. So I have experience as a first-time voter and have adequately prepared as a second-time voter during these elections. Now, while there have been efforts in the past elections to reach young voters, many still face challenges, especially around access to information and feeling that their vote has an impact. From a human rights perspective, it's crucial to ensure that young voters can participate fully and confidently. And I think that's one thing I lacked as a first-time voter. There was a lack of information, and I wasn't confident enough to make a strategic and informed vote, and ended up making an influenced vote. What's more inspiring this election is seeing how conversations around these issues have grown. It's clear that more young people feel empowered and are actively seeking information to make informed decisions, which is a testament of our nation's progress and growth.
Dr. Shapi, if there's anyone in this panel who knows about elections, it's most likely you. You've been around since the 1989 elections that saw us, gain our independence from the then, apartheid South African government. Talk to us, perhaps, how elections have changed since then and now. You were also there when the EVMs were considered the medium of how we're going to vote. Now it's not there anymore. We're back to pen and paper. But talk to us about how the elections have evolved and also how young people right now are taking to the idea of understanding that it is very important for them to participate in this democratic process.
Yes, thank you very much, Jonas. You are right, sir.
Super.
That year you are referring to the UNTAC year.
Yes.
I think I was like perhaps there. That was our first time vote as well. And of course, as you all know, that election was not run by the Namibians. It was run by the international communities, were all over, and so on and so on. Of course, I cannot even remember how the ballot paper looked like, but what I can 100% remember that I also voted. I was so excited. I believe this is what I'm expecting from our young people, to get excited so that they can see how does it feel once you are inside the ballot box. Of course, since 1992, when the first regional council and local authority election started, where ourselves as Namibian started running our own election ourselves. And fortunately, like you rightly said, I've got the privilege to be one of those people who have been appointed as assistant polling officers. Since then, I have been with ECN, as you likely said, even though not in a full-time capacity as I am today. Of course, I've seen a lot of changes. If I knew, I could just have brought you some of the old voter card we used to have, where you just have a normal paper, you put it in a plastic, We have to move on. As time goes, we thought, because of some of the ECN also, we call it one of our values, innovation and so on and so on. I went to the EVM you are referring to, which we felt, from my point of view, was one of the best thing we had as ECN in terms of logistics, especially when it comes to the ballot paper moving from here and there. You remember the issue of allegation of ballot paper flying around. We felt this is the story which we should now get end of the flying ballot paper, even though it was not really ballot paper. But of course, those are all issues. But as I'm speaking right now, since 2014, then we started coming to even the registration of voters, where we have to use biometric system, whereby it also helped to enhance our system, whereby we are able to detect duplicates. I remember the story used to be told that, yeah, even dead people used to vote then, because you are not able to clean the voters register as it's supposed to be, because normally voter register is a living document. Even in terms of our Electoral Act, after 15 days of the month, we receive the death record from the Home Affairs, where we have to clean it. Now, with the current system now, it's making our work very easier, and we can 100% proudly say that in terms of international standard, that the voter register should be 90, only 5% error, which we will be above that, because we are able to detect. Even the recently concluded GRV, once we put our data together, we could find out that Jonas have registered twice. We are able to do that. So this is where we are now. But unfortunately, we are back to our ballot papers. The EVM is no more there. I don't want to talk about it. We all know it's history now. We are back to our ballot papers, which we started with. But of course, the registration process itself has been enhanced. It's biometric. We use our fingerprints. Once you go, you just scan. We're able to see that this is Jonas Mambo, is the registered voter. Quickly, you can go and put your mark on your choice. That's where we are now.
All right. Lapaka, you are here representing a very important demographic, not only in Namibia, but across the continent as well. Africa is considered as the youngest continent in the world, but they're also considered the king and queen makers, because you have the power to decide, like Malcolm X said, who goes to the State House and who stays in the doghouse. As a first-time voter, please give us your impressions about everything about campaigning, how parties have conducted themselves in getting their message across. Have they been speaking to your demographic, young people? Have they been saying the things that you think ought to be addressed? And what does voting mean for you for the first time?
Right. Thank you so much, Jonas, for having me. I'm so excited to represent the king and queen makers, as you say, especially in a time where Africa is literally experiencing a wind of change, and it's crazy. But I think as of my impressions of the campaigns as of late, I think I really enjoyed the shows. It was really, I loved the music.
Yeah.
I think in terms of speaking to the young demographic, they've really outdone themselves in terms of entertainment. But when it comes to the manifestos, not so much, especially as a political science student who's literally taught to read and analyze and scrutinize a manifesto. I don't think they really did deliver to the 71% in terms of all the manifestos, but I did love a specific manifesto. I'm not going to share it here, but I did love a specific manifesto because they spoke to what the unique challenges that the youth are faced with right now. And as much as everybody spoke towards it, I think the fact that they were able to focus solely on the youth and their problems, I love that. And I think in the future, I would love to see that. But for now, what my expectations as a first-time voter is, I'm very privileged to have studied study political science,
yeah.
and to also to be a voter in an era where civic education is so popular and literally made accessible to me, because now I don't necessarily have to be a political science student to know the importance of voting, how to vote, and why I should vote. So I think that for me is amazing. And just like Ms. Jessica said here, unfortunately, when she was a first-time voter, she didn't have all of this. But I'm grateful for the fact that I have this opportunity. I think it's very demure.
All right. Please just break down what demure is. But we'll talk about that later. Mr. Tatishapi, the word demure is I'm still also confused about that, but I'm sure she'll talk about that a bit later on, just to break it down, because the young people have a very, new and catchy, vocabulary that kinds of, throws us off sometimes.
Exactly.
But let's continue with the discussion. Jessica, I'd like to get your thoughts around, and as an observer, what has stood out for you in terms of how the campaigns were carried out and the manifestos that you have probably also just, read on. Do you think that, enough has been done, for the young people now who were in your situation a few years back when you were a first-time voter to make much more informed decision and also feel like, man, I can vote for this individual or vote for this party confidently without fear or favor?
Yes, definitely. So I think about 3 months ago, I sat down with different stakeholders, your political parties, private sector, government, youth group, faith-based group, basically all stakeholders, to just understand their preparedness towards elections. And I've noticed how this year has really emphasized youth-focused outreach. I mean, I think it's the first time we have a youth ambassador, your previous Miss Teen Namibia, and I think that in itself was an exciting initiative that the ECN brought forth, ensuring that polling locations are accessible and making information more relatable to young voters, going door to door, civic voter education campaigns, just having registration booths at universities and high school halls. This sense of inclusion has made a difference in how young voters engage and feel safe throughout the process. It's the first time that I've seen young people actively participating, and not just by voting, but being involved in the process from inception to almost completion phase. And I'm genuinely proud to see how these measures help young people feel valued and confident in their voting rights. I mean, the young lady over there sounds so excited to have the access to this information, to be able to receive manifestos and understand the different ideologies and so on. So that in itself creates a sense of belonging and harmony. The fact that your political parties and your politicians engage young people on their preferred platforms such as Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, just that two-way communication and conversation that's been happening within the nation. So yeah, that's what I've observed as an election observer. Right. Thank you.
Brilliant. Tatishapi, I'd like to ask you from the ECN perspective, do you think that you have done a good job in reaching out to the first-time voter? And I was thinking today that first-time voters are not necessarily young people. There are people who are probably in their 40s, who've never voted or never chose to say, look, I don't see a need for this, but circumstances have changed, and they feel like it's now my time to, to take up this right of mine to go out there and cast my vote at the ballot box. What are your thoughts on that? Have you done a fantastic job, in your opinion, to reach out to the first-time voter? Not only necessarily, the people who say demure, but everyone else. The other people who also say, we'll call KFC Kentucky. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Jonas. I think it said itself. If you will have listened to the two young ladies, the first-time voter and the second-time voter, how she observed, how she's bringing it up. And that also already proven that we really have done enough. Also in terms of the statistic, believe me or not, we have got elections all over the world. I don't think you have any, during the registration they reach 91%. That is a milestone, believe me or not. Believe me or not, that is the reality. But of course, this all came because of the initiative, and I'm happy that they also mentioned it. She mentioned the issue about the youth ambassador we never used to have. But of course, I'm also coming to the people you are talking about, the issue of not necessarily the first-time voters, the people who might be 40 years, they have never voted. Yeah. I think this also we reached. Why I'm saying so, I don't want to go deep into it, but if you, this morning, when we had what we called a special, it's not for the first time we're having special voting, but we never used to see what we saw today. How the category of people who are supposed to be voting for today, how did they flock down to the polling station? Now, these are the people you are referring to, the 40 plus. They were even storming like young kids running to get sweets. This means we reached out and people are so enticed. they really feel so excited. They really want to vote because of what ECN has done. I'm not only taking credit as an ECN, of course, our stakeholder should take credit as well, because this is the first time also where even churches came to ECN to say, please, we are ready to help you. Even in our services, at the end of the service, for us to inform the people, for them to go and vote. But of course, remember, registration is another thing, voting is also another. But what I'm looking at, of course, we are not a social media people. We call ourselves BBC, born before computers. But what we are reading now, because we are also learning, you see that young people are talking, how they are encouraging each other to go and vote. I believe the 71% we required for the young people, this might also be another milestone where we might end up getting even 90% turnout. I might be over-exaggerated, but that is the possibility there. Looking at the excitement we are seeing, even the people whom first, I remember they used the time where the young people would tell you, go and vote for what? Yeah. And this is the mistake they used to make. They don't understand that one vote can make a difference. And I think they understand now. And also when you look at the political party as well, the 21, if you checked the list of the 21 political party who are going to participate here, if you look at each of the all political party, they have got about maybe 40 or even 50%. When I say youthful in terms of the definition, they are there, which means all these are new things which you are seeing. I think that's maybe the one which is making them excited. But at the end of the day, like I said, I really heard from them how they are excited, how they are being engaged. And Wira's also mentioned about the issue of they even go to the universities, our voter education are there, our civic, and also social media we're using. All this made us ECN to be very proud and waiting what will be the outcome in terms of, not necessarily who won the election, but the turnout. That's what we are more interested in as the institution. Yeah.
Now, Lapaka, you're wearing two hats today, first-time voter and a political science student, which automatically makes you a political analyst. You spoke about the winds of change, right. And he mentioned something that it also has surprised them as the ECN, saying they've never seen this before. In your analysis, what do you think has brought about this wind of change? What is it that has brought about this new political awakening amongst Namibians, young and youthful as well? But give us your analysis of the contributing factors of this wind of change, as you mentioned, that we're seeing right now.
Right. Thank you so much for the question. I think young people finally understood that in the club, we all fam. So I think this brought about the passion for democracy and to have your voice heard. I think with the examples that we have from other countries that also had their elections right now, and how these young people took to social media, how they would prepare themselves to go to the ballot, and what they would do in preparation for that, and what they would read just to make sure that they actually make an informed choice, has encouraged, I would say, it's positive peer pressure. Yes, across the borders, because not only first, within the beginning of the year, we had South Africans on TikTok tell us that, no, we are going to vote because of this and this and this reason. And they started posting dance videos. They started showing us why you need to vote. And in a way, this sparked a trend amongst other young voters. Even as far as the United States, we saw people on TikTok coming to not only inform us about it, but tell us, remind us about the importance. And now that we have, now that we are awake, and now that we understand that it is up to us to ensure the change that we want to see, it's up to us to ensure that our voices are heard at the ballot. We actually want to take up the responsibility. We are done leaving the responsibility in the hands of those that have gone before us. So I think that is what brought about this wind of change. Yeah.
All right. Just when we come back from the break, we will pick up the conversation with you. Just sit tight. And for everyone watching at home, you're watching Situation Critical. Stay tuned. We'll be right back after this. Back to Situation Critical. The topic today is all about empowering first-time voters and also just looking at how campaigns were carrying out, what impact they've had on young people. And as promised, Jessica, we promised to pick up the conversation with you. And I wanted you to focus on the fact that Namibia has enjoyed peaceful elections since 1989. If there are any cases of violence, they're perhaps very isolated, but not compared to other countries, not only on the continent, but beyond the continent's borders as well. If you drive around Windhoek, you'll see different party supporters putting up their posters in peace, not being harassed by anyone. We don't see any posters being taken down. Jessica, what do you think this says about our political maturity as a country that is 35 years old? 34, turning 35.
Well, it says a lot, Jonas. I've observed elections in about 4 to 5 African countries as a short-term election observer with the African Union. And I am so amazed by how organized we are here in my country. Every time I travel out to observe elections, I'm so grateful to be Namibian. It makes me prouder to know that I carry my country's name around my chest, because in other countries, there's a huge sense of violence. There's police brutality. Everything is just disruptive. I mean, compared to Rwanda, Rwanda, I believe, is the one African country that has peaceful, free and fair elections. And I'm glad to see that Namibia is following suit. We have not heard of any disruptive cases. We have not had any disruptive elections. It's always free, fair, transparent. And I think that in itself is testament that we're growing as a nation and our democratic process is governed properly. And in that regard, I would just like to obviously thank all the players, because these are serious matters that we deal with. And as young people, we don't get to understand the magnitude of elections, and not just during the year that we are voting, because we have the tendency of only taking elections serious during the year that we are voting. But the cycle starts from the previous year that we voted throughout. Like, this has been ongoing for 5 years, and there are background players that made it possible for us to be able to just go to the polling station, cast your vote, and get home safe. You understand? So in that regard, I would just like to thank all the key players, because in as much as it just looks like ECN and political parties, there are players like the media, the police, different stakeholders, and just like a group of people coming together to ensure that we are governed properly. Thank you.
Absolutely. ECN, of course, one of the major players in these elections. You have a code of conduct. What is it about your code of conduct that makes political parties adhere to them, to the last letter? What is it about ECN that makes it so respectable?
Thank you very much. First of all, I think it's even good that you are bringing up this question. Recently, 2-3 days ago, I think you witnessed how all the participating political party came and signed the code of conduct. Code of conduct is kind of a rule to say, okay, we are going into the game. How should we play this game? So if I can always quote our late President Maysol, rest in peace, so that you should play the ball but don't play the man. That's basically what it is. And I'm happy that, like she rightly said, and I'm really happy that I'm hearing this from the young observers. I also went across all to observe the election. In fact, when we get ourselves peers there in different election management bodies, where they will exactly tell you that we have not seen something like that. Even in Namibia, where people are just suffering, you will see that even though not an extreme, they will hear. There was even recent in Kenya, where even our officials have to be killed and so on and so on. Now, the code of conduct, why it guides to say what should the political party do, does, and do not. And we are really happy that because of the peaceful nation we are, the political party adhere and respect the rule of law. of course, like you rightly say, you can find individual here and there, but these are not really an extreme whereby it might end up to say that it has really went beyond what we are not want, which is indicated in our code of conduct. So code of conduct is actually like the word said. This is to say like, how do you conduct yourself when you are approaching the elections, so that at the end of the day, when somebody is going to declare that the election was free, fair, and everything, that really meant so. Because sometimes there are some sort of intimidations. I'm not saying what is happening in Namibia in general. And if such incidents are happening, then how will you declare that the election was free? If somebody was free, wanted to be free for him to voice his voice through his democratic right, and here comes somebody who's intimidating that somebody, then of course that election will not be called being free, because people did not have the free choice because of certain people who said you cannot do this if you do this. You could see there's some, especially lately, there's some areas just after independence, and this one I'm very happy that our democracy have grown. There used to be places where they call no-go areas. Today you can find anywhere else. They are doing their campaign freely, and so on and so on.
Absolutely.
And this is a really part of the code of conduct, which is telling our political parties, they matured, that you cannot do this. You can even see the polls, 20 political parties, they all put at one. Even the issue of the tree, if you remember, where there used to be this tree can only be put the flag of a certain political party. Nowadays, you don't find such a things.
Yeah, in as much as we're a peaceful country, social media has become an area where we discuss, where we exchange ideas. And for some reason, or some very obvious reason, when it comes to elections, it's like we turn into other people. You know, we expose our ugly side, the language that we use on social media platforms, you know, to talk bad on a country or talk down on a candidate. What do you make of it? And, you know, are you appreciative of how young people are using this platform? Because it's a double-edged sword, social media. We can either use it to build or we can either use it to destroy. What is your observation been on the exchanges, political exchanges amongst Namibians, especially young Namibians, on social media during this campaign period as we approach elections?
Right, I first would like to acknowledge how peaceful it was before the manifestos were dropped and how chaotic it became when the manifestos were dropped, and how you would have individuals from political party A literally attacking political party B, threatening their lives. It is true that social media is a double-edged sword, and that you can either empower somebody with it or you can mislead somebody with it. And I think with as much as we have come or we have grown within our democracy, and that we are at a certain level of political maturity, we're not quite politically mature yet, because we still find situations where Anna from political party A cannot engage with me because I'm from political party B, and because I'm from political party B, it means that I am a threat to Anna's existence. And this sort of creates a polar environment, and in as much as we don't like to mention it, I think I'll be the sacrificial lamb to step on that, to say that I feel like in as much as everything, the political landscape of Namibia is also a bit polarized, with how we have people in the North Pole and people in the South Pole, because they fail to come together and recognize that we are actually working together for the betterment of everybody in the country. And so it doesn't necessarily mean that because I don't believe in your ideology that I am a threat to your life, or that I don't want a better Namibia. But maybe a better Namibia looks like this to me for political party.
Yeah, and that's what democracy is all about.
Yeah.
Jessica, I'd like to get your thoughts around, you know, our social media platforms, and from your experience, we've seen that, you know, in some countries have resorted to shutting down the internet during the elections, to apparently some governments would say, well, to discourage disinformation and misinformation. But what are your thoughts around the fact that Namibians have access to the internet throughout, and how responsibly should we use this right?
Well, rightfully said. I would like to start with the issue of misinformation and disinformation on social media. I think that in itself plays a crucial role, especially for first-time voters, because many a times not everyone has the privilege to have political conversations at home. And most young people get this information or access this information on social media platforms. And truth be told, we are easily influenced, and young people are easily pressured on social media. We believe what person A says instead of believing what we can find ourselves by reading and really just understanding the politics around elections governing the country and the democracy in itself. So yes, social media is a double-edged sword. I think it's important for us to put fact-checking mechanisms in place. I know that the Namibia Fact Check organization has really been trying to educate young people and just the general public how to fact check information, look at things such as deep fakes, technology facilitated gender-based violence against women politicians. So it's important to look at things from both ends. Are you on social media because you want to be influenced? Are you on social media because you want to gain information or access certain information? Are you on social media to make a mockery out of the democracy? What is your role as a user? And how do you govern yourself? Because the same rights you have offline applies online as well. We speak so much about digital rights and inclusion. We speak so much about internet governance, but who governs you behind the screen? We run around saying that Meta is the problem because they don't take down posts in line with their community guidelines, or we blame the government. But you as a user, when you sit behind your screen and you type out something, do you sit down with yourself and actually think how this will impact someone else? How you're influencing a young person in Ochumise that is looking up to you, because you're not on social media alone. It's not a platform just for you. And this goes for everyone, our political parties, our various stakeholders per se. When you post something, you should really look at the implications it will have, negatively and positively. Yes, some things will positively impact someone, but before you tweet something or before you post something, really analyze and understand, will this break or make someone? Because sometimes there's that young person just waiting for you to tweet before they go vote. And probably your tweet will discourage them from going to the polling stations, because now you have discouraged them with the misinformation and disinformation that you have put out there. And I think it's important that we tackle misinformation and really just make fact-checking a priority, really just make cross-referencing a priority, see who is behind that account, understand, have conversations, reach out to people and hear from different angles what this really means. Like the young lady mentioned, before the manifestos came out, everything was quite calm. But after the manifestos came out, it became a bit chaotic because everyone was spreading misinformation. It's important for you to knock on the doors. I'm sure people have their offices open. I'm sure political parties will not shut you down if you want access to certain information. Really take initiative to understand, because at the end of the day, it's just not a vote. You're not doing this because you want to put someone in power. You're doing this for you and the generation to come. You're doing this for a young person that is not able to cast that vote. So in as much as we are the who's and has on social media, it's important to know that the decision, the choice you make in either tweeting, in either voting, impacts a greater generation. And that's one thing I'm telling myself as a second-time voter, to say that I can't be posting certain things on social media because the internet never forgets. And 10, 20 years from now on, my child will see that post and ask themselves, then why should I even go vote if mommy said A, B, C, and D 10 years ago? Absolutely. Like, is democracy even really that important? Is politics even really that important? So it's important for us to cross-reference how we interact with one another on social media, and really just to ensure that we know that there's a limit to every right. Where your right ends, mine starts, and where mine ends, yours starts. Right, so with that said, I think in particular this year's election, I've seen young people actively seeking the truth, however, not in a very diplomatic way or in a very governed way. Yes, it's important for you to want to know why A, B, or C looks that way when you're not satisfied, but you don't have to do it in the most ruthless way.
Absolutely.
There's always
Just,
a way to approach
Jessica,
conversation without gunning at someone.
Jessica, let me just cut you short.
John.
We don't have much time. I just want to give our other panelists just an opportunity to just chip in there. But thank you so much for that valuable input. To the Shapi, as we approach elections, just give us a brief rundown on what I need to do on that day. Okay, I registered. What identity do I have to have on myself? What do I not wear when I come to the polling station? Just briefly, just run us through that. There's a crash course for the first-time voter at the polling station.
Thank you very much. I think that's a very important question for the first-time voter. First of all, this extends to all Namibian nations. They should understand that, because I know even some media also, they give some information, not necessarily misinformation, maybe they don't have the understanding. We have got 2 elections we are going to have right now. We are only having them at the same time, but these are 2 different elections, a presidential election and National Assembly election. Mm-hmm. So when you are going into that voting station, you should expect to get 2 ballot papers. And this way I want it for people to understand that when you go there, you'll find we arrange our processes in such a way that it clearly indicates the steps, how should you go from one point to another. I wanted to emphasize the issue of the 2 elections because people are always saying national election finished. They don't understand that we have got 2 elections. In fact, if we could have a choice, you could even have them at different dates. But of course, because of the logistical issue, we have them. Now, when you enter first polling station, at the very first, and I'm talking to my young first voter here, that there will be a place where you have to verify to make sure that you really need to have the document which is required. And this document is voter card in terms of our law. Not ID. I know there are some countries that are using ID, like South Africa and other countries. But in Namibia, you must have a voter card. If you don't have a voter card, then unfortunately, you can't move further. Now, that voter card also, not only just having voter ID, it must be a valid voter card in terms of where you are going to vote, whether that card is voted. That's why we have got to have to verify you. In fact, when I say valid, we are expecting, remember during registration, there were a lot of confusion. They says presidential election, I can register anyway. That's not what it says. You register in the constituency you reside. However, when it comes to this election, where you can vote anywhere you have found yourself. But what is important is you must have a voter card. And before you even going to be given that beautiful ballot paper for you to go and cast, we're expecting to make sure that we don't want you to go and vote twice. That's why we use some ink which we call the visible and invisible ink, which we apply to each and every voter, so that to be able to go and get. Once we give you that ink, it takes about 7 days before. Even if you try to clean it, you'll find out that you voted. That's one of the security measures we put in place. And then you get your ballot papers. Of course, after you get it, you go to the booth. That's a normal, I think you are learning it now through your social media. And you are going to put your voice in that box.
All right.
And after that, we're expecting you to go home and wait for the result. That's exactly what we're expecting.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Dr. Shapi. But in the interest of time, we'd just like to get your final thoughts briefly. You have about 30 seconds to look into that camera and you give your message to the young people, first-time voters, and why this is so important.
Before my 30 seconds starts, I thought I was going to hear a list of items we need to take to the voting queues come 27th of November. So I think I'm going to give the list of items. Please take along what the gentleman over here did mention, but also please bring in your water bottles, the medication that you will need, and also some snacks for me in the queue. But I think, again, my message remains the same. I think I need to look into this camera, but please do show up to vote. This is your democratic right, and we are responsible for ensuring the future that we want to see. As young people, we are the leaders of today and not tomorrow. As my dear friend, Mr. Armando Peters would always say, that the choice lies in your hand.
All right, brilliant. Jessica, your 30 seconds, just briefly, your word to each and every first-time voter going out there to practice or to exercise their democratic right?
Encouraging all young voters to stay engaged beyond these elections. It means providing ways for them to see the impact of their participation. In as much as we are encouraging voter turnout, it's important to continue the conversation even after the vote, and not just to go home and wait for the results to come out, but to ensure that young people are still actively involved and stay informed, because next year again we have.
Oops, I think we lost it, but I think we got a gist of what you're saying. Let's thank Jessica Lapaka and Tata Shapi for your time and your brilliant input on this topic. And I hope people have taken this message to heart. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
All right, now before we go, we also have an African proverb, and that's a disclaimer. Has nothing to do with political parties, but the African proverb goes as follows. You learn more when you lose than when you win, meaning losing teaches you valuable lessons that winning can't. Steve Jobs once said that getting fired from Apple was the best thing that happened to him because it allowed him to start fresh and unlock new creativity. Failure isn't what ruins us, it's how we see it. Failure shows who your true friends are, reminds you of your strengths and your weaknesses, and teaches you to handle success. You don't need to aim for failure, but when it does happen, let it teach you something. Until next time, remember the tagline, situation critical, minds philosophical. Peace and love.